Welcome to the Peds NP, Pearls of Pediatric Evidence-Based Practice. I'm your host, Dr. Becky Carson, pediatric nurse practitioner and clinical assistant professor at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. And thank you for joining us again in our Acute Care PNP faculty series, co-written by outstanding faculty from renowned universities across America. Our practical approach, adorned with pearls of wisdom founded in the scholarly literature, is intended to help you build functional skills from conversational commentary that can translate to your competency-based education or bedside practice. When we focus on how to do a skill, rather than what to know, you'll be better prepared to apply these concepts in clinical, master a new skill set, and meet the goals of your acute care PNP practice, regardless of environment. This episode on well-being and resilience pairs nicely after that double episode on delivering bad news and the case study on delivering bad news. Our jobs can be so difficult in so many ways, so our goal is to help you recover with this episode, then help you rejuvenate with the next episode on a 5-minute meditation for pediatric providers. A special thanks to my co-author on this episode, Bridget Sullivan-Garmisa. She's the Advanced Practice Provider Wellbeing Program Director at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Let's get started on bolstering your own well-being and resilience. As I began to write this episode, I tried to set the mood and bring the good vibes to harness wellness. I turned down the lights in my office. I lit a scented candle. I sat crisscross applesauce on my blue office couch. I closed my eyes, tilted my head into a sniffing position, laid my hands fully supinated on my knees, ready to take in the energy from the world around me. I focused on my breath, in through the nose, out through the mouth, in through the nose, out like the ocean, in through the nose, out like a lion. And then I noticed my mind start to wander, to wellness, to the podcast, to the listeners that needed to hear this message. Whoops, got a little distracted there. Show yourself some grace, Becky, but get back to your breath. In through the nose, out like the wind. In through the nose, out like a dinosaur. Then my mind wandered again. How will this series get out with everything else I need to get done for my day job? Campus-intensive simulation planning, accreditation, grading, mentoring DNP students, national committees. Whoops. Distracted again. Refocus. Only now I noticed that my hands had gone from supinated, open palms, to overturned hands, grasping my knees. My breath was shallow, hurried. It was clear that I didn't have extra energy to share with the world. My workload was rooted in my spirit, and it had a strong hold on my heart. My breath quickened, along with my heart rate, and I returned to my computer, lest I fall behind on the tasks that won't wait for me to be at peace before coming due. Burnout. Well-being. Mindfulness. We often hear these terms applied to healthcare roles, but what exactly do they mean? What impact do they have on us as individuals and members of our healthcare teams? Today, we're going to take a deep dive into the world of healthcare well-being, what it means, how we can study it, and what we can do to improve, both for ourselves and for our patients. In the next episode, we'll go through a 5-minute guided meditation for pediatric providers that you can listen to again and again. Maybe it even becomes part of your morning routine. But first, let's get started by understanding why wellness is important. Then we can talk about how to embed some of those evidence-based practices into your daily life to create resilience for your important work and support your well-being. In the broadest of terms, well-being is personal, contextual, and fluid. It can change throughout the day or even the hour. For example, well-being in your personal life, on a day off that's filled with activities that support resilience, may look like a bike ride to the farmer's market, a hot dog at the baseball game, or coffee with a friend. This is a very different picture than well-being in your work life, which may include joyful moments of connection with patients, an EMR that allows you to enter orders efficiently, and a printer that seamlessly connects to the Wi-Fi to print educational materials right when you need them. the National Wellness Institute offers a definition of wellness, which is a term that can be used interchangeably with well-being. Wellness is a conscious, self-directed, and evolving process of achieving full potential. An active process through which people become aware of and make choices toward a more successful existence. I like this definition because it captures how broad the well-being scope is, as well as emphasizes the fluidity and individual ownership of the process. Now that we've defined what well-being is, let's talk a little bit more about burnout. In an occupational sense, it's a phenomenon that results from chronic stress in the workplace and has a critical impact on patient care. In scientific literature, the concept originated in the late 1970s from a researcher named Christina Maslach, who defined it to have 3 domains: emotional and physical exhaustion, detachment and cynicism, and feelings of self-doubt or inefficiency. Recognize burnout by watching for these signs: a complete lack of energy, even when the workload is low or you have a day off. Basic tasks or even enjoyable activities become chores. Sleep is disrupted and can even develop into chronic insomnia. When we combine these, a number of other somatic complaints can develop too: anxiety, headaches, appetite changes, or problems with digestion. The withdrawal and detachment comes after that eternal pessimist wins, where increasing isolation can occur. Or maybe you can still show up and function, but your exhausted autopilot is just checking boxes, and it shows. Beyond your personal wellness, there are healthcare and societal implications of burnout and chronic stress. The Institute of Medicine published To Err is Human in 2000, which drew attention to preventable deaths caused by medical errors in hospitals. A 2016 study from Johns Hopkins drew attention for claiming that an estimated 250,000 people die from medical errors each year in the United States, making these untimely deaths the 3rd leading cause of death in the United States. And while this statistic grew skepticism from critics, another meta-analysis published in BMJ in 2019 estimated that 1 in 20 patients in the United States were affected by medical error in some way, and that of that 5%, 12% experienced either permanent disability or lethal consequences. Why is this important? Once To Err is Human recognized our fallibility as imperfect humans, a national agenda of reform calling for improvement in healthcare quality and safety began. The report acknowledges that how we show up as humans is going to impact our patients, which inspired the Triple Aim by Berwick, Nolan, and Whittington in 2008. You may remember the Triple Aim as the OG of healthcare quality improvement: improved patient experience, improved patient outcomes, and decreased healthcare costs. In the years since its publication, 2 additional elements have been added: healthcare provider well-being and optimization of the healthcare network to establish health equity. That means that now our goal is the quintuple aim. We can see that they're all interrelated, and burnout plays a big role. Burnout has been studied extensively in healthcare roles, most commonly for physicians and nurses. We know that burnout is associated with adverse safety events, increased healthcare cost, decreased clinical and operational efficiency, and increased costs of employee turnover. So that's a lot of impact, right? Burnout is a big deal, not only for the individual experiencing it, but to our patients and the healthcare system overall. What then is causing it? Since it's a complex syndrome, there are likely lots of things that contribute to its development. If you dove into the psychology literature, you'll see themes around 6 major categories. So number 1 is the workload. So that's the stuff that you get done in a given day. Number 2 is control. How much input do you have on how your workday goes? Number 3 is reward. So that's your compensation package, any positive feedback you receive, joy sparkers, intrinsic rewards, things like that. Number 4 is community. How does your work area or unit culture influence how you feel at work? What's that team dynamic that really makes you feel in this together? Number 5 is fairness. Do you perceive what you do as similar to someone else in your role? And are those other roles or people treated differently? And number 6 is values. Do your beliefs mesh with those of your team or your institution? And although it's different, I think it's important to talk about compassion fatigue here too. Burnout is physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion caused by unmanaged chronic stress, while compassion fatigue results from repeated exposure to other people's trauma and the persistent giving of self. Their manifestations have some overlap in mind-body symptoms like poor sleep, mental fog, and digestive problems. But a key of compassion fatigue is emotional numbness, hopelessness, and the decreased ability to empathize with others. As pediatric nurse practitioners, we're exposed to emotionally challenging and stressful situations regularly as a part of our jobs. Sick children, death and dying, high patient volumes, disgruntled caregivers, persnickety colleagues, and that printer that just won't connect to the Wi-Fi. Not to mention the weight of the load we carry at home when we're not busy being healthcare superheroes. What are we realistically supposed to do to mitigate the effects of burnout and put our wellness as a priority? Luckily, there are some often cited frameworks that help systems to organize well-being efforts. We can put well-being in healthcare into 3 main buckets: the culture of wellness, the ease of daily work, and personal resilience. First, the culture of wellness. Your organization owns this bucket, and they are overarchingly the ones to determine it. But you may need to advocate for yourself for the organization to create systems of change. The culture is built in many different ways, from the larger organization to your supervisors, colleagues, and team dynamics. Next is ease of daily work. There are organizational factors here, but I'd argue that there are also some individual factors that can really make or break your workload. And you need to be self-aware enough to identify and act on them. Work smarter, not harder. So consider things like, what is your relationship with your EMR? Do you love it and can't wait to enter orders because you've created shortcuts, templates, and smart phrases? Or do you spend hours after work finishing up the charting from your workday? A little investment in new systems of thought or borrowing charting tips may be something that adds efficiency to your day and diminishes stress. My employer invested significant energy into creating lists of templates for common diagnoses we see, and a colleague shared a genius shortcut on inputting my billing information. Those 2 things combined has probably saved me an hour of charting per shift, and I can often leave with all of my notes signed. And that helps me come home and jump right back into family life, which is where I wanted to be all along. Consider other things too, like, do you have enough people on your team to safely care for all of the patients? If not, you may need to create processes that aid in surges of work or resource shortages, all centered on team dynamics and effective communication. Lastly, let's talk about personal resilience. What are those personal practices that promote your own well-being, and are you engaging in them? What fills this bucket is very personal. Knowing yourself and what you need is so important to how you show up as a professional, and it ultimately impacts the care you provide for your patients. Do you get enough sleep? Do you have the time you need to drink or pee or eat a snack? What brings you joy in your job? How often, in your current position, do you get to connect with that joy? And what needs to happen in your day to make your work the most meaningful to you? What are you doing today and every day to rest, to replenish your inner self, to praise and be kind to yourself, to honor the light in you? Self-compassion is when you're supportive towards yourself when experiencing suffering or pain, either through personal mistakes or from external life challenges. Approaching yourself with love and care when experiencing perceived failure, inadequacy, or hardship has been strongly linked with well-being. When you learn how to be kind to yourself, you can transform your relationship with your patients by being emotionally available to then show them kindness and compassion. Being kind to yourself also reduces the negative impact of your own reaction to the hard things you may be facing daily at work, and it reduces the likelihood of burnout. As we learned earlier, burnout can influence so many things: safety errors, healthcare costs, impact on quality. If you're practicing self-compassion, you can influence burnout and theoretically all of its impacts. For me, self-compassion looks a lot like my parenting style. You may think I'm crazy, but I don't believe in punishment or timeout. Sure, there are consequences of actions sometimes, but I believe in tracing the problem back to my child's developmental understanding of the world and then connecting. I'm going to tell you a common story in my house and how I respond as a parent, but I want you to imagine that my voice is you talking to yourself when you need some self-compassion. You'll realize that the two aren't that far apart. So when my 5-year-old son makes a mistake, say he snatches a toy and it hits his sister and makes her cry, he will retreat to the stairs, a hiding place that is alone but still nearby, and he sits disappointed but clearly yearning for connection. He's not a good kid. He's a great kid, filled with empathy, so I know that he's there because he feels bad. I don't need to scold him. He already knows that he handled the situation poorly. But since he's a great kid, he just needs help to learn how to regulate himself in the context of the world. So I literally hold him. I put him in my lap and I wrap my arms around him, sobs and all. We take a few minutes to just sit in the current feeling. It's okay to feel like this, bub. Let's name what it feels like. Sad? Yeah, sure, I get that. Disappointed? Yeah, I hear you. Jealous? That's fair. Frustrated? For sure, I get that. Then we simply acknowledge what happened and assess the damage. I make those feelings make sense with his actions. You got carried away from keeping that toy away from your sister. That's okay. I feel like that sometimes too when I'm not ready to share. We all have struggles like this, and it will happen again. Now I show humanity and create boundaries and show love. You're a good brother and you love your baby sister. She doesn't understand how to share yet, and you just forgot that the trick is to find another toy to distract her. I know that was an accident that you hit her when you snatched it, but we still need to check on her and see if she's okay and tell her how you feel too. I know you're sorry and you love her, bub. There will be more chances to be in control of those big feelings. I want to remind you, there is nothing you could do that would make me stop loving you. We can solve any problem together. I will always be here for you, no matter what. Let's think about how we can move forward. What do we need to do to get back to the fun stuff? All right, let's go. How radical would it be if you treated yourself the way that I treat my son in moments of failure or frustration? How drastic would the mood change if you gave yourself the grace that you deserve in the moments where your tendency might otherwise be to retreat, quit, or self-sabotage? How would your resiliency for your job, your profession, change if you practiced self-compassion while setting clear boundaries and taking care of your mind, body, spiritual needs? I'm a DNP, so I love to identify problems and create systems of change. Could you delegate some responsibilities, crowdsource solutions, or design innovative solutions to the greatest challenges in your workday? And when those are well managed and you still feel on the verge of a walkout, let's arm you with one more tool for success: mindfulness. Mindfulness, the practice of bringing awareness by intentionally focusing on the present moment in an accepting and non-judgmental manner, is an increasingly popular intervention to support well-being. Mindfulness-based stress reduction has been found to improve psychological health outcomes in healthcare workers. I want to finish this episode by discussing the practice, then invite you to listen to the 5-minute pediatric provider's mindfulness exercise. You'll see those symptoms of burnout totally counteracted. More connection with those around you, more productivity and problem-solving capability, greater attention, a greater appreciation for your mind and body, and what they can do. A 2021 literature review by Green and Kitchen in the Journal of Holistic Nursing found that mindfulness meditation reduced self-judgment and increased resiliency, compassion, and emotional regulation. Before we practice, let's take it back to the physiology. This is the Peds NP after all. Mindfulness centers on breath, the simple process of ventilation and respiration to exchange oxygen for carbon dioxide to fuel our tissues. Our nervous system controls our diaphragm and intercostal muscles, either to have slow, deep, parasympathetic breath that relaxes us, or rapid, shallow, fight-or-flight sympathetic breaths. Deliberate, slow, controlled breathing has the power to invigorate the parasympathetic nervous system in a way that leads to lots of physiologic changes. Lower blood pressure, fewer stress hormones in the blood, improved immunity, increased energy, normal acid-base balance, and even better mood. To best facilitate abdominal diaphragmatic breathing, sit comfortably in an upright, tall position with one hand on your chest and the other on your belly. As you breathe slowly through your nose, try to keep your chest hand still while your belly hand moves outward. Make note of where your body feels tense and release that tension, allowing your attention to come back to your breath. When should I meditate? Anytime, but try to make it a habit. Maybe you're not a morning person. Take some time at lunch or in the car just before you go into work. For me, it's after I drop off the kids, right before I refill my cup of coffee. I first need to refill my soul. And it doesn't have to be long. Just 3 minutes is enough to make it count. What am I supposed to think about? It's your practice. You pick. You could focus on gratitude and all the things that you're thankful for. It could be on feeling peaceful and relinquishing pain. You might focus on your senses, the coffee you taste, the shampoo you smell, the birds you hear, the feeling of your leather car seat cushions. Meditation is valuable because it builds our perspective. By giving you some control over physical and emotional sensation, you can alter the path of your day. When practicing mindfulness, the hardest part is quieting all the thoughts that I want to have about my day, the agenda, my tasks. It's easy to get distracted. But remember self-compassion and what it sounds like to talk to my kids? Take that same approach to those sneaky, intruding thoughts. Wow, that is so interesting. Let's come back to that later. Oh, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to wrap that up with a little bow and put it in my pocket for later. Ooh, that's important. I want to hear more about that. But right now we're focusing on breath. I'll put it in a safe place until we're ready to come back to it. How big of a bubble can you blow? Good thing we're in Peds, right? Just how we honor children who want to show off their developmental prowess, let's honor our important thoughts so that we feel comfortable coming back to it later and avoid the guilt that often comes with being distracted. If you're restless, feeling big emotions, or totally feel like you're not getting anything out of it, that's okay. Acknowledge it. Those feelings are likely to ebb and flow just as quickly as they come. Cultivate comfort with your feelings in the current moment as they come. Stay present, move your body how it feels like it needs to move, recognizing the positive or negative sensations that you experience, and return to your breath. If nothing else, you can always return to your breath, in through your nose, out through your mouth. The light in me honors the light in you. I hope that you'll like, comment, and subscribe to the Peds NP, where we discuss the practical application of evidence-based practice in a conversational way that helps you synthesize and transform the best practices from the literature into your clinical bedside skills. Thanks to the acute care PNP faculty who supported the creation and review of this series, especially my co-author on this episode, Bridget Sullivan-Garmisa. You can read all about our peer review process, the contributors, competencies, show notes, and references at thepedsnp.com/faculty series. Share it with a colleague, pass it along to your classmates, and text it to a friend. There's no financial support or conflict of interest in this episode of the Peds NP. Follow me on Instagram at the Peds NP Podcast. Email me at thepedsnp@gmail.com. And remember, this isn't just a podcast. Your well-being matters for the kids. I'm Becky Carson. Take care.